We got 32.7 million views on YouTube this month. So, I posted 35,000 pieces of content this year. We did a $100 million book launch for $100 million money models. In 72 hours, 3 days, we did over $100 million in sales. The issue that most people struggle with is that you're making not in number one, and the types of content that you're making are not attracting the types of customers you want. The promise that I have for you today is that I will show you a framework that I've called SBCL, like SBCL if you want, but it's how to build influence rather than how to get as many views as possible or anything like that. All right. Butet's a 4-part framework, and I want to break down each of the 4 you so that you can think about how you want to approach making content. All right, and building a brand in general. SPCL. These are letters, and hopefully your headcam works. All right, so SPCL. So what do these actually stand for? All right, so number 1 is status, and this is why you hear me talk about proof so much. But how do you define status from an operational perspective? For those of you who are new to the channel, I like to operationalize things, meaning like I like to look at objective realism. Describe how you would see it with your eyes rather than try and put a whole bunch of like emotional words around stuff, because these are the like that type of language is what confuse them. For a very long time when I was coming up, and it was only after I started defining things by what I could see, what I could observe did really feel like sharper, more crisp to me. And me ability to predict what was going to happen next increased by a lot. And so this is why I talk in this way. So how do I find status? So status is someone who controls, reinforces in a given. So that's a little bit fancy word. But fundamentally, if you control the good stuff that people want, then you will have status, no matter what it is. Right? And so the simplest example I have is like if you go to Abba and it's a busy bar and there's a bartender and you have to get the bartender attention in order to get a drink or booze. That guy in that moment is status. He controls a scarce resource. Right? But if that guy walks out of the bar no longer controlling that scarce resource, he does not have its same status or even close to it. Right? Like outside of the bar, he's not getting tips every single 5 seconds when he like moves his hands a little bit and like says something nice. People aren't waving money at him as he walks in the street. Of course not. It's because he has status in one condition and he doesn't have another. Now, what's interesting about all 4 of the elements that I'm going to break down, they all can work independently. But the idea is that you want all 4 to be stacked together. And this is what gives you the most influence, right? So, like any of these 4 on their own would give you influence. Like that bartender, if he just says that, he would have some level of influence. And I'll give you a different example of this. If a kid inherits money, right, they're going to have a status, right? Like if you have money, even if you didn't earn it, even if you didn't anything, if you have money, you will have some degree of status because you control something other people want. Period. That's how it works. All right. But would that kid who has money have the some status as a kid who has money who also gave you, 10 different Cropoan pics? That all popped off, right? Well, if he gave you 10 different pics and you followed them and they all popped off, how much more influence will that person have over them saying, hey, you should put money in this, or hey, you should, give my money for XYZ or whatever it is. Obviously, I'm talking money because I'm a business person first. But think about how much more influence Evgen 2 would have with just 2 of those things. versus version 1. That is difference. But if you have all four, that's when you become a super sad. So, status is number 1. So, you control scarce resources. Power is number 2. I would say, if I had to only pick one, I would pick power. And I'll explain why. Power comes from something in the behaviorodynamics world called say. What that means is, if I say something and then you do it, and then a good thing occurs, a reinforcement happens afterwards. You are more likely to comply with the following. Right. So said differently, it gave you the example of the guy who said, hey, here's 10 stock picks. You buy them, and then a good thing happens. The thing goes up. Great. So, that person has status and power, which is why they are more influential than the trust fund kid who just has money. And so to some degree, for many of you who are trying to make content one it's like okay status, I want to demonstrate that I control a scarce resource that some people might want to item. And so what makes this a little bit more muddied is that sometimes one event can check multiple boxes. And so I'll give you a simple example. When we launched TheBook, we did 100 million plus in sales. That in and of itself, me having money from the event gives me status. Messaging, hey, you can loan stuff. In this way gives me credibility, right? Because I showed that I have an event. I have something that has happened as a result of me doing it. That gives me third-party credibility. There's some thing that you can observe with your eyes, right? The reason that my ads dabble when I have my, $10 million building behind me is like, oh well, that's hard to fake, right? And so, you have credibility there. And so, one event, like selling a company, can give you money. It can give you credibility. And then if I give people directions on how they can do things that are similar, and then good things, then all of a sudden you get power. And then the last is likeness. I'm skipping around. But hey, we're having a good time, alright? And so, credibility is number 3. And I'm gonna go in more detail. I know these. Alright. And then likeness. So what's likeness? So likeness is statusi. Some people say this can be both up psychological in terms of you share similar values with this person. You like their vibe, whatever you want to say, right? You like their behavior set, and that behavior set matches to people who have been positive in your life in the past. Or they literally just look like you, right? So like Lila and I could talk about the exact same stuff, but she's a girl, and so she's going to have more chicks who follow her than me. And fourth, for the few ladies who do follow me, I appreciate you. Primera reayido. I bet I have like an 89% Malay audience. And Samabi, it's because of the topic. But I would think, Admion said, I think, it's because I talk about money and I talk about business. That's why I have a more male audience. Balea, I think, is like 54% female. And she talks about almost exclusive Lemonian business. I'm obviously shit-ecked about some mindset. Stuff to booty, I say this to say, okay, if we have these 4 things, and these are the things that create influence, and I would have influence as high likelihood of compliance with requests. So what does that mean? So if I say, hey Yaukno, grab my new book, or I say, hey, come to this web, hey, I'm going live. Like, come check it out. Or, hey, you should come to a workshop. Whatever it is, right? You make some sort of solicitation. And it could be like, or subscribe. It doesn't matter. Like there's levels of how, quote, Big O-Fan-esque something is. If anybody's played like a video game, it's like you have like a role for like Dungeons and Dragons. And it like depends on how charismatic, how much influence you, how high of a role or how low of a role rather, you'd need in order to be successful with the request. Right. And so, if you want to stack that stat for you, Then if you want to min-max your influence, if you will, then you want toe stack. All 4 of these things. Okay. You're like, okay, I think I'm following with this. So how does this relate to content? So, first off, starting from the back, likeness. He thinks so much more of it is just be you. There's zero ROI in trying to be or act in a way that is different than who you are. It's a relative illiterate message, but like most people, ARENPCs. Most people say, they look at like the 4 different outfit, combinations that exists, 4 different kind of mental stereotypes. It's like, oh yeah, Gaiwo loves barbecue and craft beers. Oh Gia, that's that archetype. I'm just going to be that archetype. Oriof got like hipster bro who likes hipster. Right. Or you've got a, like Jess bro, right? You've a gat, just like stir bro. And Piopli Simwat put me in that status. But I also liked for a few years, was wearing like sandals that looked like Relu, and I wore those, and that was not broy at all. But like I wore then Kusti were super comfortable, and I didn't have to like wear socks, which is a bad thing for me. Anyways, but point is like thing what makes you unique if you actually lean into the nuances that make you and actually have a way to defend why you do what you do. Because most people don't even think about why they do what they do. And if you do things and you don't know why, it's because you're following Zamion else's directions for your life rather than your own. Weird like real that, and so much of us have been programmed by people earlier in our life. And I say programmed as though we're like machines. But what person do you think in your life has super high max status, power, credibility, maxed out earlier on in your life? It's your parents, right? It's our parents. So think about all 4 of these elements. Status. Do your parents control scarce resources? Things you want. They've got money and they've got us that they can buy you. They've got food. They've act like they control your shelter. Like they have huge amounts of status in your life because Zethi control all the scarcest resources. All the things you want. These are not binaries. So don't think like, oh, I have status. I don't have status. It's to what degree do you have status, right? Like if somebody's got more money than you, they might have some status. If you've got $1 and someone's got 10 grand, they got more status than you, right? But if someone's a billionaire, they have way more status than the Giwa's 10,000, right? So again, think not in binaries. Yes or no, but thinking. So the next one is, think about your parents' power. How many reinforcement cycles do you assume that your parents had from the time you were born? And when I say reinforcement lease, it means like they said, do this. You did that thing and then a good thing about it. Now, you might be like, I had to meet dad or hate my mom or whatever your thing is. I don't really care. That doesn't matter for this purpose. The idea is that they probably said don't go in the street or don't do that and you avoided a bad thing or do this and then a good thing happened, right? You teed your shoes the first time. You put that wabani ears together. You tied your shoes. Good thing happened. You followed their directions. Think of both how many times a parent has given you directions and you followed them and a bad thing was avoided or a good thing many. And so it makes sense that not only do they have a lot of they have a lot of power. What else do they have? Credibility. Now, this is one where I think parents somatize might lack compared to the other things. If you have a parent who also has credibility in that specific, realm of whatever it is that you're talking about, then you have even more influence on you. And then finale, for a parent. Alakeu, yeah, they literally look like you, right? And oftentimes they share similar values to you, to a degree. Obviously, some people just go polar opposite from their parents. That's fine, but I'm talking in sweeping generalities. For most people, this would at least explain a breakdown like why do parents have so much power over us? How do they have so much influence over our behaviors? You might not even want to listen to your parents. You might even like your parents. But you can still feel that you have to resist their requests. Because you are so programmed based on these elements of behavior to comply with their requests. All right. And so, 10th idea is, how do we take these 4 elements and then how do we reverse engineer these into the content that we have so that we can build up true influence? And again, we're as the likelihood of a compliance with a request, right? And that likelihood will depend on the nature of the request and how much your SPCL is in relation to that thing. Right? If I was giving out fashion tips, I probably don't have a lot of credibility for fashion tips, right? I didn't know if I control any scarcer sources around fashion. I have no fashion hookups. I probably haven't given anyone specific fashion. I have no third party anything for credibility for it. And you probably didn't look like me. And so, it probably would have very low influenciato. Some degree they can generalize. I see you go up and up and up, but, you have a more influence in domain specificity. IFU. No, these are the 4 things. Status, power, credibility, likeness. Then for each of these things in our videos. Right, we want to demonstrate that we control scarce resources. And so for me, like at the very beginning. If you think about what the intro was, right? So I said we did, $32.7 million views, and we did over 5-something million in sales. 4th book launch in 72 hours. And so that's me, demonstrating status. I have these things. Right. Thin power. So, what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to break down 4 things. So, you can follow, and if you follow these, you're going to be more likely to get people going to comply with your future requests. And so, that means that you're not just going to watch your video, but they're going to be more likely to watch a next video. And if you have any kind of call to action in the video, whatever level of call to action that is for you, whether it's subscribe or like or share or no, by something that's small or set up or call or whatever it is that you sell, then this is going to be second, right? Like that you'll have included that in your content. So then credibility is going to be the third-party stuff. So the reason that I had, at my launch, for example, I had to pay those judges out to be on site was because I wanted to validate the books that we did and the revenue that we generated was legit, right? So I had a third party that most people respect as a legitimate corporation that they're in, is based on trust that they validate and verify proof that these accords were broken. And so that gave credibility. The likeness piece, like I said earlier, it's just you being you, right? And so that's why I'm actually super pumped to do these live streams best. This is I honestly hate making YouTube videos. What I mean that is staring at a camera and having prompts to, solicit me to say stuff. I will do it because I have a relatively high pain tolerance and I'll do what is requisito. Get what I want, but I'm going all in on this. So if you guys are what's Alex's kind of media strategy for the future? I'm focusing on 2 words. You can write. Done. Live. Interactive. Those are right, the 2 things. That is describing Thai 3.0 or Mozy Media 3.0 vision for what's going forward. That is what I'm focusing on. And he'll tell you a story of why I think this is so interesting. So, I had a conversation with a mega I didn't think you would mind with Mr. Beast a few weeks ago, and we were talking about kind of the future of media and content. One of the things that he was just talking about was this soccer game that came up to UK versus US. What ends up happening is that they have all these different celebrities or influencers from different platforms right? And so starting from the lowest people on this little totem pole, they would walk out in the stadium, and this become the kind of the de facto, like measuring stick for who had the most school points, right? These are the A-listers. And so this is your typical kind of celebs from like movies and like 90s and the 2000s or whatever, right? People like they recognize Koza wrestling, but like they don't have like huge, I guess they have some media presence, but it's more like tradition. The level of applause for these guys was almost nothing. Barely anyone cared. So then the next level that came up was the shorts creators. So this is your like only TikTokers or people who only make reels, but like in the short videos. And so they had a little bit more applause on the applause meter compared to the 10th long-form guys came out, and this East one, the audience got way rowdier. Alright, so this is your podcasters, your YouTubers, the people who make long-form pieces of content. And I'm going to pause you for a second to kind of like highlight why I think this is. I don't think there's anything wrong with shorts. We make tons of shorts. But I see the purpose of shorts is many times a way to get someone to watch along. Right. They watch a couple shorts and then think, okay, this guy seems legit, or this gal seems legit. I'm going to risk my time. Because that is the risk. They're making an investment, right? You're making an investment today. I will risk. I'm going to get a good return on this, right? And so shorts then lead to longs. But let me show you the difference from an influence perspective. How many reinforcing cycles do you think you can have in 30 seconds compared to 2 hours? It's like not even close. And so if Somioni watched 2 1-hour pieces of content, for me, period, okay? 2 1-hour pieces. 120 minutes for me to get that some level of exposure and kind off cycles of reinforcement. With a prospect and they were only consuming shorts, right? Let's say my very short, let's say it's 15 seconds. So that means that's 4 shorts per minute. So if I have 120 minutes for longs, I have to do so my own, would have to watch 480 shorts to have the same level of exposure as watching 2 hours with me. And think about how important this. What were the things that people said like this was the quote, Trump went on, and I don't care about the politics behind it, but I do care about influence and persuasion. And so, like, why is it that the 2 podcasts that I think really nudged us? My opinion is the Trump 3-hour plus podcast that he did with Rogan like a week or whatever it was. I think that was a huge influential event. I think Elon getting on Tucker Carlson and doing that interview, I think those 2 interviews were some oft interviews that really nudged the election. And again, I don't care who IU voted for. It doesn't matter to me. I think about this from marketing persuasion, okay? And so because of that, audiences who were not sure got to spend 3 hours with a presidential candidate. And as a result, it just nudged some of them in the direction to ultimately vote. Okay? Now back to our little story. A-listers have almost no applause. Shorts have slight applause. Longs have legit applause. 10th live streamers. When the live streamers came out, it was like the entire auditorium or stadium or arena erupted. And when I heard that, it was such a visual example of, we have the saying, which is like butts and seats. If you just make a bunch of like meme content, right? You demonstrate almost none of these things. Some of you guys are chasing views when what I think you want is you want to have prospects who are more likely to comply with a future request. And so we need to change our behavior to maximize the likely thing. And so in looking at this thing, this is why I'm telling you like showing my cards. I'm going to be doing more live streams, and I think also, and this is me like outside OFSPCL, but I think like I think that the internet will always move towards truth. And so I think the A-listers, everything's super polished. It's photoshopped, it's scripted, and the Sayu move closer this way. It's roar. Like you have a 3-hour podcast. Like they're not scripted. Right. Or most often aren't. Right. Streaming. It's like, yeah, we're live, right? I can't anything. Like we're live. This idea of how can we approximate the Rust reality of us hanging out, right? And actually going through this stuff. I think that is what will unlock the most influence as long as you are still including these SPCL elements into it. And I think that's the marriage. Do SPCL and do it as many times as I possibly. That's the idea. And so live streaming provides that data opportunity. Let's also think about this from a context of volume, whether you like him or not. Rogan, tremendous influence, right? To the same degree. PBD, tremendous influence. Udav Ramsi, tremendous influence. What is it that these guys have in common? They're putting out hours of content every single day. So, I said earlier that we had 35,000 pieces of content, right? I heard plenty of times there's tons of, $1 million businesses, $2 million businesses, things like that. They put out one piece of content a day, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. That's 365 pieces of content a year. And if you think about the size of acquisition.com in terms of our revenue, right? Compared to somebody who's doing $1 or $2 million a year and they're doing 365 pieces of content, we're just quite literally doing 100 times. And as a result of that 100 times volume, what do you think's happening? We get a 100 times deep respect. And so people want to try and outsmart themselves and thinking that they can not do the work that's required. But it's actually far more linear than you would expect. So we just know that 1 out of 10, Shorts is going to go. Yaukno is going to be a 2 or 3 out. We just know what that math looks like. Same thing for longs. How do I just jam as much into that input machine as I possibly can? And as long as I'm checking these boxers like I'm making the right kind of content, then you're going to get the right kind of prospects. So, I'll give you one more nugget. Like I said, which is that sum of, you guys may have heard this, and it's a concept of social media now, turning into interest media. Okay, so what does this mean? Let's unpack this for a second. If you make a content and you judge it by views, I think that's dumb, and I'll explain why. If I have a grandma in public come and just do a running slap and just slaps me across the face, that video will probably get views. But does it get the grandma views? No. Does it get me any more people who now believe more in me stuff? No. But what it will do is, it will show it to people who are interested in humor, which is a lot of people. Right? But those might not be your customers. So assuming you're not an entertainer and you are somebody who's abusing his person, if you sell services to Onion, you're likely going to be an educator, not an entertainer. Meaning you're trying to provide a value to people to change their behavior in some way. And ideally, changing behavior that gets them to walk closer to you and by stuff. Okay. So what do I mean by social versus interest? If you went to attract the right avatar Mackie content, for that avatar, that sounds subious and simple. And the thing is that no one does it. Because here's the right or downer. The content is theater getting. The algorithm is so good now It knows what you're talking about. It knows. It can literally judge your background. It judges what you are wearing. It judges who you are in, will display it to the people that they know have a history of watching content that is similar to that people find valuable. And so if you're making stuff about how to fix pianos because you're a piano repair guy, then you will find people who are trying to fix their pianos. But if you're making that type of content, you might be like, man, I'm only getting, views of videos. It's like, yeah. But the market of people who are buying pianists might be significantly smaller than the market of people who just want to be entertained or distracted. So it's not fair to compare your views against Mr. Beast's. It doesn't make any sense. If I were to think to myself, like, I have a room of 1,000 people that are going to watch this, and all of them are only interested in fixing pianos, that's a hell of an opportunity. I care so much more about IRL responses. So, what do I mean by that? If I make a video, and then I get texts from business owners that I like, and that I respect buying like, yo, that was fire. Then I'm like, okay, I'm on the right track. And so, some of you guys, let me know in the comments you guys have seen a format that we've talked about, Weckle Cash Cows. But basically it's me. There's a business owner that presents a little bit about their business, and they come to this side. And we talk about how to improve their business, right? So let me know in the comments if you like that. And if you will do, let me know if you're a business owner or not, okay? So, I like that style, and I'm not a business owner. I like that style. And I am a business owner. Or I don't like that style and I'm a business owner, or I don't like that style and I'm not a business owner. If you are a business owner, when I have people who are here in person IRL, in real life in Vegas, right? Business owners who fly out. I say, what is your favorite type of content? Dollars to donuts. That's their favorite type of content. And so, I make more of that. Even though, and it would make sense, that there's fewer of those people, right? Just think about math. If you've got you got the whole population here. I'll show you a little graph on these. So let's say that 100% of people, like this represents 100%. Let's just this USA because I already know all the numbers for USA. Okay. So let's say this is 100%. All right. You get 100% of people are interested. Okay, well, right now, only 9% of people even own a beauty. Like, 9%. So right off the bat, I'm going to have a huge percentage of people that aren't my ideal audience. Now, of course, I do have people who are business interested, and that's why I'm a co-founder of school, and we give people, a way to go start a business online in a low-cost way, right? Which you can do. It's $10 a month after a 14-day trial. You guys can't check it out. And there's a bunch of training and community and all that good stuff. All right. But you can go school.com, I think, for Arosi. I think it's below this video. Doesn't matter. Point big, 9% is what I'm competing for. Okay. Now, that means there's about 32 to 33 million business owners in the U.S. Okay? 32 million, that's 100% of all business owners. Now, within that, 95% of that 9% is below $1 million in revenue. 95%. Then I've got 5% of that 9% that area over $1 million now. If you want to talk it weird with it, what percent do y'all think is over 10 million? 4%. 1 in 250. And then 100 million. 9 figures. Is I think 1 in roughly 3,000, depending on your day. 1 in 3,000 businesses gets to 100 million a year. This big. And so it would make sense-a-thon that we've given these numbers, right? 9% is 32 million. So out of 5% of that is only be 1.5 million people. There's only 1.5 million people who are business owners doing. Over 1 million based on my thought. This is Census Bureau data. Maybe theirs isn't correct, but that's the math, right? And so if we're looking at that, the market, then it would make sense that I'm not going to get all 100% of them to watch me video, right? If I got 1.5 million views and 100% of them were business owners, that would be insane, right? And so it would make sense that like if I get 100,000 views on a video that test, that's really made for that level of business owner, then I'm crushing it. Right? And it doesn't make sense to look at, Mr. Beast's video with 100 million views and be like, oh man, I suck. It's like, dude, we're going after we have different games, right? And so I'd encourage you to create accurate expectations of the size of the market that going after, and also think about the translation of these IRL. I have 2 businesses that I looked at in the last year that were doing over $1 million a year with less than 5,000 followers. You absolutely can make plenty of money with a very small following as long as you make content that's directly valuable for that following. Alright, with that being said, we just went over SPCL status, power, credibility. What you want to include in your videos, why I'm going all in on live stream, and why the whole point is you want to get as much time with your prospects as humanly possible. You want to make the topics of your content based on the things that those people find interesting, not based on like being social, but being interesting. And if you make it interesting for them, they will keep watching it. And then being realistic about your expectations on how many views you can get based on your size of